There is a continent sitting on $24 trillion worth of minerals. For 20 years, the West ignored it. China didn't. And now, your phone, your car, and America's entire military depend on a supply chain that Washington doesn't control. The Democratic Republic of Congo, a country the size of Western Europe sitting in the heart of Africa, holds 71% of the world's proven cobalt reserves. The battery in your electric vehicle runs on it. The battery in your smartphone runs on it. The guidance systems in the most advanced military hardware on Earth run on it. And right now, the majority of it is controlled by Chinese state-owned companies who got there 2 decades before anyone else thought to look. To understand how that happened, you need to understand one deal, one agreement signed in 2008 that became the template for everything that followed. China offered the DRC something the West was not offering, not lectures about governance, not conditions about human rights. Roads, hospitals, railways, power plants, in exchange for one thing: mining rights. The 2008 Sicomines joint venture gave Chinese companies access to 10 million tons of copper and 600,000 tons of cobalt over 25 years in exchange for $3 billion of infrastructure, later expanded to $7 billion. And then, China did something even smarter than buying the mine. It built the road from the mine to the ocean. The Tanzania-Zambia Railway, now under a 30-year Chinese management concession, links Zambia's entire mineral belt directly to the port of Dar es Salaam. China does not just control what comes out of the ground, it controls how that material gets from the ground to the ship, and from the ship to the refinery, and from the refinery to the factory, and from the factory to your phone. That is not a supply chain. That is a stranglehold. But here is where the story changes. In February 2025, cobalt prices hit a 9-year low. The DRC looked at the numbers and made a decision that sent shockwaves through every battery manufacturer, every defense contractor, and every technology company on Earth. It shut off cobalt exports entirely. For 8 months, prices surged, the world scrambled, and when Kinshasa finally opened the tap again, it came with quotas, less than half of previous output, with permanent ban threats for violators. The DRC just did to China what China did to Japan in 2010. It turned a mineral into a weapon, and it worked. Because here is what 20 years of Chinese dominance obscured from everyone, including China itself. The country that built the most powerful mineral processing monopoly on Earth has 0 domestic cobalt mining capacity. Every gram of cobalt that feeds Chinese refineries comes from Africa. China controls the refinery, Africa controls the mine, and Africa just realized the refinery is useless without the mine. 13 African countries have enacted mineral export restrictions since 2023. Zimbabwe restricted lithium exports, Namibia restricted raw mineral exports, Malawi banned raw mineral exports entirely. This is not a coincidence. This is a continent that learned from watching China and decided to use the same playbook. America noticed, 20 years late, but it noticed. In February 2026, President Trump announced Project Vault, a $10 billion strategic reserve for critical minerals, the largest financing in export-import bank history. He signed the Washington Accords, a peace deal between the DRC and Rwanda, and attached mineral access agreements directly to it, a peace deal tied explicitly to mineral rights. America learned China's 2008 playbook and started running it in 2026. But here is the problem that $12 billion cannot solve. China doesn't just own mines in Africa. It owns the railways from the mines to the ports. It owns the processing facilities that turn raw ore into usable material. It owns the magnet factories that turn processed material into components. And it built all of that over 30 years of patient, deliberate investment that America is now trying to replicate in 30 months. By 2035, China is projected to supply 60% of refined lithium and 80% of battery-grade graphite and 70% of battery-grade manganese. Buying African mines does not change those numbers. Building alternative processing capacity does. And building processing capacity, as I showed you in my rare earths video, is the part nobody in Washington wants to talk about honestly, because it takes decades, not dollars. If you have not watched that video yet, I highly recommend you go check it out after this one. It is linked in the description, and it explains exactly how China built that processing monopoly in the first place. And if this kind of analysis is what you were looking for, hit subscribe, because this is what I do on this channel. Now, here's the paradox that sits at the center of everything I've covered across these two videos. My rare earths video showed how America gave away the processing monopoly that powers the modern world. This video showed that the raw materials feeding that monopoly come from one continent that has decided it's done being the world's quarry. Africa has the minerals, China has the processing, America has the capital. And the country sitting on $24 trillion underground is now negotiating with both superpowers simultaneously, playing one against the other, extracting the best possible deal from a rivalry it did not create, but is finally learning to use. The continent that spent a century being extracted from, by colonial powers, by Cold War proxies, by corporate interests that took the value and left the poverty, is now sitting at the table where the rules of the 21st century economy are being written. Whether it gets a fair deal this time is the most important question nobody in Washington or Beijing is asking out loud. And here's what I want to know from you. Africa has the minerals, China has the processing, America has the capital. Which of those three actually holds the most power in 2026?